small business and common sense conservative Brad Viss, and thank you to Common Sense Senator for British Columbia and Deputy Leader?
Yes.
Deputy Leader Yona Martin. An honor to be with all of you here today to share Canada's Common Sense Plan. As you know, this has always been a country where anyone from anywhere can do anything as long as they worked. They could achieve any goal. But after 9 years, that promise is broken. We just learned today that it now takes 28 years for an average Vancouver family to save up for a down payment. Before Justin Trudeau, you could pay off the entire mortgage in 25 years. We now know that there are 2 million people lined up at food banks. Before Justin Trudeau, it was a very small number that needed food bank assistance. 25% of Canadians now live in poverty, according to the Food Bank Association. 1 in 4. 1 in 4 children are going to school hungry, according to federal government statistics. You know, before Justin Trudeau, almost every child was able to go with a full stomach to class. Now it's 1 in 4 that are hungry. After 9 years of Justin Trudeau, housing costs have doubled. Vancouver is now the most expensive housing market in North America and the 3rd most expensive in the entire world, which is just mind-blowing. More expensive than New York City, Chicago, London, England, even more expensive than Singapore, which is a tiny island with 2,000 times more people per kilometer than Canada, yet they get more affordable homes than Vancouver. And then there's crime, chaos, drugs, disorder, extortion in our streets after Trudeau's wacko liberalization of drugs and guns and crime. But the good news is, life wasn't like this before Justin Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. We're going to bring home the country we knew and still love, where hard work earns a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. We're going to do it with a common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. We'll axe the carbon tax and lower income tax so hard work pays off and you bring home more. We will have homes that you can bring that paycheck to by requiring municipalities speed up and lower the cost of building permits, free up land, and cut development taxes as a condition of getting federal funds. Every large municipality will be required to permit 15% more home building per year as a condition of getting federal money. If they don't do it, they're not going to get the money. So now the incentive will be to get homes built. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, and we're going to back up the trades so we have boots, not suits, that can build those homes. We will fix the budget with a common sense dollar for dollar law that requires our politicians find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, thus bringing down debt, inflation, and interest rates. We will ensure that our streets are safe again by stopping the crime. We will stop the crime with jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders. A new mandatory prison term for extortion by adopting Tim Singh Applejee's bill. Tim Singh Applegee has got a bill to bring back mandatory jail time for extortion after Justin Trudeau reduced the penalty and allowed extortionists to get out of jail quickly on bail and parole. We're going to secure our borders with scanners and boots on the ground to stop illegal drugs and guns from coming in and stolen cars from going out, all while respecting the right of law-abiding citizens who have licenses to own and use firearms for hunting and sport shooting. As for drugs, let's face it, the NDP and Liberals have decriminalized crack and cocaine. If you walk down the street with a beer, the police will stop you. And if you don't put your beer away, they will arrest you. But if you walk down the street smoking crack or ingesting fentanyl, they let you enjoy yourself just fine. This is how crazy it's gotten. You know, it's funny, Trudeau wants to ban plastic straws and legalize crack. So it's like he's saying, you know, go ahead and snort cocaine, as long as you don't snort it through a plastic straw, then that's fine. You know, as long as it's a paper straw, that's the important thing. It doesn't matter to him that 40,000 people have died of overdoses since this wacko policy came into effect. Common sense conservatives will ban hard drugs. We will invest in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. We'll also unleash the potential of our brilliant immigrants by bringing in a Blue Seal national licensing system to allow immigrant doctors, engineers, nurses, and others to take a test, prove they're qualified, and get to work in their licensed profession within 60 days. We'll fight for a flight from Vancouver to Amritsar to save 20 hours of travel to the Golden Temple from Vancouver, and we will fight for the freedom of everybody to enjoy the Canadian dream using a common sense plan, the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Now let's bring it home. Thank you.
All right, we have a list of media organizations here, and everyone will get a chance to answer a question, but I'm just going to call out the media organization, and we'll go in that order. So to start, Iran International, please.
Hi there, Meghal Shahidi with Iran International English. Iran has a new president after Ebrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash. What do you expect to see from a Pezeshkian presidency? And as a follow-up, how would your foreign policy differ from that of the Trudeau government when it comes to hostile states like Iran?
Well, first of all, what I want to see is that the Iranian government reverse its direction and stop harassing and abusing the population in Iran and here in Canada. I plan to direct my CBSA and immigration officials to deport non-citizens who are linked to the Iranian regime, so that you no longer have to see regime officials in gyms and restaurants and enjoying their mansions that they pay for with money stolen from the Iranian people. We want to kick them out of this country. We'll bring in the most devastating sanctions on the regime imaginable. We will ensure that the ban on the IRGC, which was long delayed, is actually enforced, and that to criminalize any activities by that organization. And we will, we'll confront the Iranian regime at every step. The regime is evil. It is targeting its citizens. It's harassing our citizens in this country. I believe it was behind the October 7th attack. I believe that we know that they killed 55 Canadian citizens, 30 permanent residents in the PS 752 attack. We need to hold them accountable at the International Criminal Court for this terrorist attack on our country. And that will be my approach in dealing with the regime in Tehran. Thank you.
Up next is Sanja TV.
Sonia West, Sanja TV. Good afternoon.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. My question will start with a quote
Yes.
by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. A question was posed about what he was doing to help the environment. He made the following wacko statement. We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of water when we have water bottles out of plastic, away from plastic towards paper, like drink box, like water bottle sort of things. Mr. Poilievre, how do you plan to address the concerns of young Canadians regarding climate change?
Right. And
what policies would you implement to ensure a sustainable and green future for Canada?
We have to unleash low-emitting and zero-emitting sources of energy like nuclear, hydroelectric, and other clean Canadian energy. We have the resources here to do it, but we have among the slowest permitting times. So if you want to get a nuclear reactor built in Canada, it takes about 20 years to go through all the bureaucratic delays. Yet nuclear is the most reliable baseload supply of energy we have. We have the biggest supply of uranium in Saskatchewan in the world. And that could power nuclear reactors and small modular reactors across the country if we can speed up the permitting. Secondly, we're going to continue to incentivize carbon capture and storage. so that our oil industry can capture the carbon it produces, put it back in the ground where it came from. Third, we're going to export clean Canadian natural gas so that we can displace dirtier forms of fuel in places like India. The National Bank showed that if Canada supplied India with enough natural gas to meet half of its new electricity demand, then we would displace enough coal to reduce global emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the annual emissions of the entire Canadian economy. So why not export our clean Canadian gas right from the British Columbia coast, powered by clean hydroelectricity and liquefied in part using our cold weather to profit Indigenous peoples along the West Coast and reduce emissions of greenhouse gases in other parts of the world. That is my common sense plan to lower emissions and consumer prices using technology and not taxes. Let's bring it home. Thank you, Sonia.
Up next is Ben Chosen, Korean News.
Yeah, hi, I'm David from Ben Chosen. Yes, so I have a quick question regarding the housing issue. So underused housing tax was introduced since from this year. So do you think it's working right now? And so if you become a prime minister, then so how are you going to restrict the expatriate from a foreign country?
No, it's not working. If it were working, then house costs would come down. Have they come down? They bring in this new tax and they say that somehow this is going to reduce housing costs. Well, it's been in place now. It hasn't worked. And they banned, and they're cracking down on Airbnb, and that hasn't worked. So the problem is very simple. It's a very, very simple problem. Supply and demand. That's it. You can blame it on speculation, but do they have speculators in the States? I think so. It's the most capitalistic economy in the history of the world. I think they have speculators there. So why is housing costs 45% cheaper in America? Why is it you drive south of the border and the cost of the house goes down by 30, 40, 50, 60%? Is it because the Americans aren't greedy? They don't have any speculators down there? Of course not. There's speculators everywhere. There always have been speculators everywhere. Speculative profits are not the cause. They are the result of inflating prices. What is the cause? Too many people and too much money bidding on too few homes. We have the fewest homes per capita in the entire OECD, even though we have the most land to build on. Housing should be dirt cheap in Canada because we have the most dirt, but it's the most expensive because we can't get anything built in Canada. We have the second slowest building permits in the OECD. It takes 3 times as long to get a permit to build homes in Canada as it does in the US and in the UK. And they build their homes just as safely and just as cleanly. So we need to speed up the permits and free up the land. I'm going to require municipalities permit 15% more housing completions per year as a condition of getting federal money. We'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land. Every federally funded transit station will be required to have sky-rise apartments all around it so seniors and students can live next to the bus or train. Otherwise, they won't get the federal funding. I'll leave you with one last question. What do you think is the biggest cost to building a new home in Vancouver today? What do you think it is?
Yes.
Land? Labor? Lumber? Permits. 60% of the cost of a new home in Vancouver is permits. More of the money for a new home goes to the bureaucrats in the buildings than goes to the carpenters, plumbers, and electricians who build the thing. So the problem is the bureaucracy. We have to get the bureaucrats out of the way to build the homes. And that's what my common sense, by the way, it's $1.3 million of governmental costs in every new home in Vancouver today. Think about that. You build a new home, it sells for 1.5, 300,000 of it goes to the builder, the worker, the materials, the land, and the rest is going to the government. So we know what the problem is. We need to get the government out of the way so builders can build. Thank you.
Up next is Desh Pardish Times.
Yeah. My question, what do you think about extortion calls to the local businesses and inactive behavior of police force? What do you think about
The inactive behavior
of police force?
Police force.
What's the extortion calls?
Go ahead.
Nice to see you, sir. I'm going to just step in on this because it is a local issue to Abbotsford.
Yes.
It was my community that was targeted significantly along with Surrey. The RCMP took an unprecedented action and dedicated hundreds of officers when we have a police shortage across Canada because they saw extortion as being such a major and real threat to the public safety of Canadians. So as Pierre mentioned earlier, Tim Uppel, my colleague and deputy leader of the party from Edmonton, put forward a common sense bill to increase the penalties and jail time for people conducting such illegal activities against our business owners in Canada. Unfortunately, all of the local MPs here in Surrey voted against that because they don't support measures that improve public safety. It is not every day that the RCMP sees an issue and says, we need to act on this so quickly that we're going to take hundreds of officers and create a national program to combat extortion. And they did the right thing. Extortion's gone up by 300% in Canada. Let that sink in, 300%
Since Trudeau took office.
since Trudeau took office.
But I think, a part of Punjabi media claiming that it is a community problem, not Canadian problem. What do you think?
Well, the RCMP stated very clearly that it was transnational gangs based in India, who have obvious ties in the Fraser Valley and Metro Vancouver regions. I just had a house shot up in my community because they found one of the wealthiest landowners and they went and shot up his house. So this is a real problem. The Liberals refused to work with us on a bill that we were really seeking consent. But they're more interested in dividing Canadians and sticking to an old narrative that the victim and the criminals are the ones that come first and not putting the public safety of our province and our country first. So we're going to continue to fight on this issue because the problem's only getting worse. And I'll point out that yes, the RCMP said it was mostly a South Asian problem.
Yes.
When that happened, 360 Auto in Abbotsford called me and they said, Brad, it's not just South Asian businesses, it's every business that's being impacted. So we're going to continue listening to Canadians and we're going to continue fighting in Parliament to get some new laws passed to give RCMP, our judges, and our society the tools they need to stop this horrendous problem.
And look, why wouldn't you, if you're an evil extortionist, why wouldn't you pick Canada? It's a great place to be a criminal. Great place to be a criminal right now. Let's be blunt. They took away the mandatory, Trudeau took away the mandatory jail time. So even in the unlikely event that someone gets caught, they'll just be released anyway. They'll be released on bail. One day they'll have a trial. Even if they get convicted, they'll get parole. They'll never serve a day behind bars. There are zero consequences. And we've become the global capital for money laundering and other international crime because Trudeau has destroyed our national police force and sided with the criminals. He brought in a bill, Bill C-75, that lowered jail time for extortion with a gun. Tim Singh Appleji has a bill, a common sense conservative bill. He's our deputy leader to bring in mandatory jail time for extortion, and every Liberal MP in Surrey voted against the bill. All of them.
Yes.
Except for Carrie Finley, the conservative. Every Liberal in Surrey voted against Tim Appleji's bill on extortion. That's what you're dealing with now. You've got to fire these MPs and elect common sense conservatives.
Up next, Jerry Punjab, and just a reminder, we're going to keep it to one question.
Welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
So, Poilievre, we know that there are so many things going on inside the country, but if we look at the international platform, at the international stage, Mr. Justin Trudeau's former Foreign Affairs Minister, Mark Garneau, there was a statement to his back that he said in his autobiography, where he said that Canada is lagging or slipping off on all the international stages. Our Indo-Pacific strategy is somewhere down the road right now. So how are we gonna when we are talking about trade, when we are talking about building relations with the international other countries, especially you talk about the Amritsar, flight to Amritsar and all those things. How are you going to build that relation once again when there are so many deep cracks going on, and not just only this, within the government as well, the PBU, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Mr. Singh, he today gave a statement that we're not going to go with the 2% of the GDP defense on the NATO. So how are we going to take that stage back?
Well, we need to have a serious leader as Prime Minister. We still, obviously it's very hard for anything to happen with India after Trudeau's disastrous trip, where he danced around like a clown, and now everyone thinks Canada is a circus because of his dancing and his childishness. And then, he's weakened our military, he's embarrassed us on the world stage, and he refuses to sell our natural resources. So I'm going to do the opposite. We will have a professional, strong, diplomatic presence on the world stage. We will unleash the power of our resources to make us an economic and geopolitical force in the world. We will cut back on foreign aid, on back office bureaucracy, on corruption in procurement, and put that money into the front lines of our military so that the world takes us seriously again as a military power. That is my common sense approach to put Canada back on the map and get things done, like a flight to Amritsar.
Up next, Snow Goose Media.
Nice to meet you, Mr.
Thank you.
My name is Jasmine. I'm from Snow Goose Media. So I have a question specifically for BC. You've just mentioned we have the most expensive housing market in North America. And your housing bill proposed penalties for cities that fail to meet housing targets. So how would you ensure that municipalities in BC, which are already struggling with high cost and regulatory hurdles, to receive the necessary support to meet these targets without facing penalty pressures?
They don't need more money. They've been getting more money from taxpayers and from other levels of government for 25 years. The funding for municipality has vastly outgrown population and inflation. If they're struggling, if municipalities are struggling with their finances, it's because they are incompetent and wasteful. The last thing you want to give somebody who's incompetent and wasteful is more and more money. It's like saying the solution to treat an alcoholic is to give them more to drink. The opposite. They need to stop wasting money, and they need to get rid of bureaucrats who block home building. And that will allow us to get things built. And there's no excuses. There's no excuses for these municipalities. Why is it that cities in the U.S. can build homes with a third of the development charges? They still have to provide parks and roads and schools in those cities as well, and yet they do it for a third of the development charge. Why is that? It's because they're less wasteful. So it's a decision that these cities, we can't just say, the problem we have in this country is we keep rewarding incompetence. Say the city, some municipal politician says, I'm broke. And we say, congratulations, we're going to give you more money. And he says, I'm going to be broke more often, because every time I'm broke, I'm rewarded. with more money. We should do the exact opposite. We have to punish incompetence and reward success. That's how I'm going to cover.
Up next, Radio Punjab, and my apologies, I spoke so long in the beginning, we're running out of time, so if we could just keep our questions very tight, thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I am Sabrad from Radio Punjab. You mentioned about direct flights to Amritsar. Brad himself has been advocating for this issue, but nothing changed. So what is your common sense plan to address this issue?
Well, I've already started. I've reached out to the High Commission, to Air India, to Air Canada, and I'm saying I'm going to make the case to them that it's in the economic interest of both countries. If we had a direct flight to Amritsar, there would be a massive increase in tourism from Canada to India. And because I suspect there are a lot of people who don't go as often to Punjab as they would because it's such a hassle. It's 20 extra hours. That's not the full flight, that's just the extra time it takes because there's no direct flight. You land in Delhi, then you have to get a rental, and you're stuck in traffic, and you're moving luggage, and you've got screaming kids. Kids scream and holler the whole way. I know I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. But if you didn't have that hassle, you might go off more often, and that would be good for the tourism there. Vice versa, you would probably have more Punjabis coming to Canada, spending money in Vancouver, Toronto, and other places. The other thing is, I think we can say to the Indian government, look, we've got resources that you want. You want lentils, you want potash, you want uranium. Let's get some trade going here, and let's put into the mix a direct flight to Amritsar. And I've already said to Air Canada, this is going to be a very profitable flight for you. So there's no doubt these planes are going to be full. If they did one flight a day, it would be full. I guarantee it. One each way, I guarantee they would fill a flight, and they'd make a lot of money on it. So it should be happening, and I think with some good business approach and some diplomacy, we can bring it home. Thank you.
Up next, Asian Star.
Asian Star. Hey, that's me, Amninder. My question is, I'm going to ask on something that we haven't touched on yet. There's a lot of migrants coming across our borders and overwhelming resources in provinces like Ontario and Quebec and BC now as well, not only social welfare but housing and other as well, and the cases are not down, it's taking a long time. Do you have a plan to deal with illegal migrants without visas who are coming across the border and applying for refugee status? These are not government-sponsored refugees, the refugees who are coming over from the US border.
Yeah, we need to make it more difficult for illegal and fake asylum claims to happen in Canada. Right now, the problem is that it's too easy for people to make false claims in Canada and too slow to remove them when they do. We need to, bring in visa requirements from all countries that are sending large numbers of ultimately fake asylum claimants, and then we need to speed up the hearings on the case so that when someone is not a real refugee, we determine that in 2 or 3 months, and then they're deported, rather than having them stay for 7 or 8 years, getting social assistance and legal representation, and housing, and all of those things, when it turns out they're not actually refugees. The problem is actually not refugees. The problem is false refugees who've made the calculation that if they can just get here, then they'll have 5, 6, 7 years on our system before they have to leave, at great expense to our system. So we have to fix that problem. And I will.
Up next, Canadian Punjabi Times.
Hi. My name is Amar Paul, and I have a question. Is lots of things are changing at the world level of politics, and new axes of powers are coming together. And NATO's the meeting is going on, and they said like it's a threat of the World War III, and Canada is a part of NATO. What your policy is you become Prime Minister, and what's your policy towards Ukraine and whatever is going on today? You want to say anything?
On Ukraine, I think the best thing we can do that we haven't yet done is sell natural gas to Europe to break European dependence on Putin and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people. He's funding his war machine, he's selling natural gas. That's how he pays for his bills. If we can take that market away from him by exporting clean, green Canadian natural gas off our east coast, then we would be able to break that dominance and get to defund Putin. We, at the NATO level, we need to be a superpower in resources and a credible power on our armed forces. And that means, as I said, cutting back on foreign aid, back office bureaucracy, procurement corruption, putting that into our front line of our forces, getting rid of the woke culture in the military and replacing it with a warrior culture. Then we will be taken seriously at NATO, and then we can defend North America against our enemies. Thank you.
Up next, Voice of Canada.
Yeah, my question is, next year, if the Conservative Party be the majority government, you will change the capital gain tax from 67% back to the 50%.
So we voted against Justin Trudeau's 66% tax on capital gains, and I've committed that I will do a bring it home tax cut. It's going to be a full reform of the entire tax system based on 3 simple principles. It will be lower, fairer, simpler. We will lower tax on investment, work, and making stuff to bring home production to Canada. We will make it simpler by cutting compliance and administration by 20% so people bring home less paperwork. And we will make it fairer by cutting handouts to large corporations and closing overseas tax havens and using the money to lower the burden paid by poor and working class families. That is our plan. Thank you.
Up next, Media Ajit.
Yes. My question is more about the job market. Unemployment rate has reached 6.8%. And do you think a cap on the immigrants would be a solution to regulate the job market?
Sorry, I didn't hear the end of the question. Do I think?
Do you think a cap on immigrants could be a solution?
We need to have reasonable numbers that our country can absorb and link overall population growth to growth in the housing stock, the job market, and the availability of social programs like healthcare. We link immigration levels to housing, healthcare, and jobs. But I think the bigger problem is Trudeau is killing jobs with high taxes,